Hello, and welcome to the National Family Support Network Spotlight on Washington Family Support Network. Today is being co-presented by Children's Home Society of America. And I'm Brenda McChesney. I'm the co-founder and associate director for the National Family Support Network, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. If you're joining us online, you may listen directly through your computer speakers. And if you've joined via the phone number that Zoom provided, your line has been muted to minimize background noise. For those of you online, please note that the link to the Dropbox folder is in the chat. Here you'll see that we have listed some of the handouts that are available for download. In addition, you may put questions in the question section at any time. The chat section is open for you to include any comments during the webinar, but we do ask for you to direct all your questions to the Q&A section of Zoom. Live tech support is also in the room, so if you have any tech issues, please feel free to reach out to them in the chat today. Today's PowerPoint, handouts, and a recording of this webinar will be made available on the NFSN website on the Webinar Wednesday page this time tomorrow. And when you exit the webinar today, an evaluation will automatically appear on your screen. And we ask for you to take a moment to complete this as it provides us with valuable feedback to inform future webinars. So we love to start all of our webinar Wednesdays with a quick pulse check on where are you joining us from? So our first poll today is literally, where are you joining us from in the United States? You'll see the options divided up on the map in front of you, and in a moment, a poll will appear. So are you representing the Northeast, the South, the Midwest, the West, Canada, or perhaps some other international country? And in a second, the polls will close. All right, so where are you joining us from today? Woo, we have a big representation from the West with 81%. We have some folks coming from the Northeast, the South, the Midwest, and it looks like no one international on today's call so far. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and go with our next poll, which is, what is your affiliation? And this poll will appear here in just a second. All right. So are you affiliated with a Family Resource Center or a Family Resource Center network? Perhaps another family support program? Or maybe you're a parent leader, early care and education representative, you are representing education industry, or perhaps government in the child welfare sector or another sector, or potentially a private funder. So take a second, please, to complete this poll. And when we notice the majority have completed it, we will close out the poll and show the responses. Fantastic. So we have 41% representing family resource centers, 31% representing networks of family resource centers, and some early care education and other family support programs joining us today. Thank you so much. And our very last poll is, what level do you work at? What level do you work at within your organization? So are you at the policy systems level, the management level, program or direct service level, or other? And we'll be closing this poll out here in a second, and we'll get to see the responses. All right, a pretty strong tie between management and direct program or direct service level. Thank you so much for taking us a moment to tell us a little bit about you. We'll transition to telling you a little bit about us. So we are the National Family Support Network. And over the last decade, the NFSN has quadrupled in size to now have 41 members, which represent 40 states and the District of Columbia. And this represents more than 3,000 family resource centers that serve more than 2 million people annually. The newest members to join are Wyoming, who came in September, and Iowa, who joined in December. So, a little bit about our mission. The NFSN's mission is to promote the positive outcomes for all children, families, and communities by leveraging the collective impact of state family resource center networks and championing quality family support programs and practices and policies. And our vision is simply to turn the whole state green so that we have a strong, thriving system of family support services in every community provided by strong family support networks. So a little overview of today's webinar. We'll start with introductions to the network and family support, the Family Resource Center network. And then we will have a moment to talk a little bit about the Children's Home Society of America, who's the co-presenter today, moving into our Washington Family Support Network presentation, which is our featured spotlight. And then we'll conclude with NFSN resources and opportunities for you to connect further with us and the field, and end with that survey I mentioned at the beginning, which is our evaluation. So a little bit about family resource centers. So thousands of family resource centers have emerged organically across the country, yet their existence is still largely under the radar as America's best kept secret. A family resource center is a community or school-based welcoming hub of support, services, and opportunities designed to support families to be strong and successful. They may be community-based, like the image on the left of the Family Resource Center in Vermont, or they may be school-based, like the image on the right that you see from Kentucky. Now, looking one level up, we'll talk a little bit about how family resource centers are connected. Not only have cities, counties, and states hit upon the value of FRCs, but they've also hit upon the value of networking them together. So family resource centers consist of 2 or more family resource centers within a community and ensure the coordinated quality support for families. And they often serve as the backbone entity to leverage and coordinate the collective impact of their members. Data from a national study that the NFSN worked with out of a research institute in Colorado found that the most common functions of family resource center networks include increased connectedness, coordination, cooperation, and collaboration amongst members, provide training and technical assistance, work on advocacy, policy, and legislation, and provide and maintain a shared data tracking system. Here you'll see 4 different types of networks. So on the left are the volunteer coordinated networks, and these are led by FRC directors themselves in voluntary leadership positions without paid network staff. Examples include New Hampshire and West Virginia. Next, we have funder coordinated networks, and these are led by a public department or foundations that both fund and convene the centers. Examples here include New York and Nevada. Next, we have nonprofit coordinated networks. And this is a nonprofit entity that coordinates the network, providing backbone support with dedicated staffing. The nonprofit entity itself is not the network. The nonprofit may incubate the network and then spin it off in the future, or it may continue to coordinate it over time. And examples here are Alaska, North Carolina, and Washington. And then the last is the independent network. And this is a staffed, independent nonprofit organization that functions as a membership alliance with members paying dues. These networks may raise and distribute funds, intermediary or not. And examples here include Colorado and Maryland. So we talk about 3 stages of network development. Emerging is that 0 to 3 year stage when you're just getting started, determining who should be at the table and what you want to focus on. Then we have evolving, which is that 3 to 5 year mark. And this is as you further develop, you may hire a contractor or your first staff, and the network begins to have more structure and capacity to do more. And then last are established networks, which is typically that 5+ year mark. And this is when you typically have staffing and a track record of activities. One interesting characteristic to note here is that these networks often have weathered a crisis and decided to stick together. Today's presentation, as I said, will include 3 presenters. We have Marlo Nash, who's the Managing Director of the Children's Home Society of America. We have Nathan Koch, who is the Washington Family Support Network Director, and Janica Lockhart, who is the Chief Impact Officer at Akin. And next, we will be turning it over to Marlo, who will be sharing a bit about the Children's Home Society of America.
Thank you, Brenda. It is a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate being invited to join for our connection to the Spotlight organization, Akin, who you will hear more from later. But that's why we're here, because AKIN is both part of the National Family Support Network and also part of the Children's Home Society of America network. So we thought it would be helpful for you to learn a little bit more about our national network and what we do. It's always a pleasure to be involved in anything that the National Family Support Network pulls together. Your CEO, Andrew Rousseau, and I have an opportunity to work at the national level in different ways. He joined our Wicked Problems Institute, which I'll tell you more about in a little bit. He was with us last fall for that. We were both together at the Disrupting Poverty Conference a couple of weeks ago with the network that implements mobility mentoring. And we both serve on the National Child Abuse Prevention Coalition at the national level, working on policy change. So it's always great to be connected. So thank you for having me. In our network, we are really focused on the fact that families are overloaded, which I know is a belief and understanding that the family resource centers all across the country share with us. And we're working, like you all are, together to strengthen communities and make society better. And we do that because we believe that child and family well-being we want to uphold that in our country. And we focus on achieving equity and better outcomes. And then our particular focus as a network is to really think about our purpose in terms of what are the problems that disrupt stability and limit potential for children, youth, families, and communities, and how do we create solutions that address those problems. So for our network, we've got folks on the ground, like AKIN, who are in states who are partnering directly with children, youth, and families every day to provide a range of the types of things that positively affect their lives and the settings, environments where they live. Most of our members have been organizations that have been around for more than a century. And what's going to show here on the screen as I'm talking is these are the different kinds of things our members provide. And many of them do a different array of the programs you'll see on the screen. So family support, Head Start and early Head Start, home visiting, lots of different types of home visiting. Across our network, we provide concrete supports. We offer family resource centers. So if we can hold just a minute on this one, and I'll just share with you that we are a network of 22 member organizations. So our model is that we have one member per state. So we're a network of 22 states and 22 members. Our member organizations are standard bearers in their state for the work that they do. They all engage in public policy, advocacy, and systems change. So they provide direct partnership and support of families and also work to change the conditions and the policies and systems that surround the families they work with and all families. So among those 22, 6 of our members have family resource centers. Many of those 6 have many family resource centers. And so there's definitely a cross connection between our network and the National Family Support Network and the work that all of you do. And that connection is growing. So our members are beginning to offer family resource centers with greater frequency and in greater numbers. So you can go ahead and you'll see a few more of the types of supports we bring to communities. So community schools, our members do, kinship care within the foster care and child welfare system, foster care, as I mentioned, adoption, mental health and behavioral health treatment, and mobility mentoring, which is a mentoring program that helps families build a pathway to financial stability. So I think from that, seeing those different types of offerings that we bring to families and communities, you can see that we are a network that thinks a lot about primary prevention and also are working in secondary prevention, intervention, and deepen support of families when that's needed, included for a number of our members are connected to the child welfare system. But collectively, overall, we as a network are really always thinking about how do we prevent child maltreatment? How do we build strength of families and communities so that more children and families thrive and flourish? So you can see our values that guide our work. And for me, in the role of managing director, this is a real hallmark of our network, and what binds us is these shared values. So I think that these will feel very familiar to you as well. And again, it's just another demonstration of how National Family Support Network and Children's Home Society of America Network are very aligned. So we are certainly focused on equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. We very much focus on engaging and listening to families and individuals with lived experiences with system who are often unheard and unheeded, and really try to shape our work around what we learn from and get to do with those people. And so our strategic priorities as a national network are all children and families have equitable pathways to well-being, that families are buffered from hardship through economic and concrete supports, and that infants and their families flourish. And that's a focus on family formation, prenatal to age 1. All of these are priorities that we uphold for, like I said a moment ago, primary prevention, but also across that whole continuum. So even children and families who may have become involved with the child welfare system, how do we ensure they have pathways to well-being? And we know that the foster care and overall child welfare system often can re-traumatize children and families. So we're really thinking about when that system comes into play in a family's life and a child's life, how do we make sure that it is protective and supportive in the ways that it needs to be to help that child and family get back to well-being and wholeness. Certainly focused on economic and concrete supports. And then our infants and family flourish priority really comes from understanding that by thousands and thousands more than any other age group, children under age 1 go into foster care. So we're really trying to address that issue. So our strategies are to frame and lead dialogue and action at local, state, and national levels. One of the main ways we do that as a national network is the Wicked Problems Institute, where we bring together researchers, our members, national partners like National Family Support Network and others who you all work with, philanthropy, and parents and individuals with lived experience to really look at what are some of the really challenging problems and how do we create those solutions to eliminate them as problems. We do innovation to generate new knowledge as part of our contribution to creating solutions to problems. And then we conduct policy advocacy and systems change to influence the funding and financing of the kinds of solutions that we know are rooted in prevention science and equity. So this is just, these are some images from our last Wicked Problems Institute, which was last September. And you see up in the left corner, Andrew was on a panel for us, and you can see some of the folks doing the work the way that we do it. We're really grounded in data, really thinking about future solutions and how we can build well-being in this country for children, families, and communities. So I invite you to follow up with any questions or thoughts that you have. I would love to hear from anybody who would like to talk more. And if your state is not represented in our network, we would love to hear from you. If you are an organization who might fit our membership criteria, or if you know of one in your state that you would like to connect to our work. So that concludes my portion of the presentation, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you, and I will be here through the webinar if there are any questions that you want to chat or ask me later, and I will turn it over to Janica. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marlo. So welcome everyone. I'm Janica Lockhart. I'm the Chief Impact Officer at Akin. Appreciate Marlo presenting on Children's Home Society of America. Just real quickly, Akin, formerly Children's Home Society of Washington and Child Haven, was a founding member, co-founding member with CHSA. We've been longstanding members for over 20 years, I think, at this point. So appreciate Marlo and CHSA co-presenting on this webinar featuring the network. So as I mentioned, I'm with Akin, and Akin is currently the host of the Washington Family Support Network. And you're going to be hearing from me today some of the history of how the network came together. And then I'll pass it over to my colleague, Nathan, who is going to talk more about what is occurring now with the network and what is the new goals of the network and all the exciting things that are going on. Next slide, please. So really quickly, I thought it was important to give context on the legacy and the meaning behind our investment in family resource centers. So Children's Home Society of Washington was founded in 1896 in Washington State, and we are the oldest statewide nonprofit in the state of Washington. And CHSW has a legacy of creating the first state law in the state of Washington around child removal. And we helped create the public child welfare system in the state of Washington and nationally. We recognize that there was good intentions there, but harm was caused, particularly in BIPOC communities around the creation of that public child welfare system. And in the past 5 years, CHSW has been really focused on shifting public policy and also public and private funding to more upstream approaches to undo the harm caused by creating this system and the promotion of child removal. And as a part of this effort, CHSW decided to advance and start various coalitions, including the Washington Family Support Network. Next slide, please. And so our investment in the network is really tied into wanting to invest in communities and families moving forward. Also a part of that journey has been the merger of Children's Home Society of Washington and Child Haven. Child Haven is a well-known organization in the Seattle-King County area that we merged with, and we are now called Akin, representing the importance of kinship, relationships, early relational health, and family and unity, all included in that name. We are currently serving 23,000 families and children across the state of Washington in 24 locations due to the merger. And Akin is very much focused on disrupting systemic and multi-generational cycles of inequity, and really partnering with children, families, and communities, and centering in that population level health and well-being as a part of our work. The cool thing at Akin is we have 7 family resource centers ourselves, in addition to supporting the network. These are located in urban, suburban, and rural communities around the state of Washington. We believe in serving families in the context of their community. So, you know, the joke with FRCs is once you visit one, you've only seen one. Same thing with the Akin 7 FRCs. They all look very different from each other, but they all take a multi-generational approach, and they offer some array of services and programming around early learning, parent and family education, behavioral health, as well as that key piece of basic needs and concrete supports in our family resource centers. So we started on this journey actually just a few years ago in creating the Washington Family Support Network with other key partners in the state of Washington. The journey really started with learning about other FRC networks around the country. Legacy Children's Home Society of Washington has been doing family resource centers for 30 years. And quite candidly, I didn't know there was a thing called a family strengthening network or a family resource center network. And thankfully, through my conversations with colleagues and partners in other parts of the country, I discovered FRC networks in Colorado and California and other places, and learned about legislative language that defined family resource centers in these states. And also learned about the power, the collective power of bringing family resource centers together to advocate for funding, as well as systems change efforts to shift public policy and funding to more prevention focus. Also learned about the quality, the standards of quality for family strengthening and support, and how beneficial it was centering around the standards in a common language, a common framework that we could use collectively with FRCs in the state of Washington. And then also the strong learning community that FRC networks have created around the country in each of their states and the benefits of that. So really learning from other states and thinking about, okay, how can we implement in Washington? So it actually dates way back in 2018 when we held a family support summit at Legacy Children's Home Society of Washington that brought together FRCs and family support staff inside the organization, outside the organization, that had a common conversation around the desire for stronger funding streams around this work, coordinated advocacy, and building capacity around best practice. That had always been kind of in the back of my mind. And then when I learned about the work in Colorado and California and other states, ended up approaching an amazing legislative champion that's been a huge advocate for FRCs in the state of Washington for over 30 years, Representative Carolyn Eslick, who was willing to partner with Akin and other FRCs and actually create a definition in state law. It was a bipartisan effort. I think it was almost unanimous across both the House and the Senate. It was signed by the governor in June a few years ago. And it defines an FRC in the state of Washington as a unified single point of entry where families, individuals, children, and youth in communities can obtain information and assessment of needs, referral to, or direct delivery of family services in a manner that is welcoming and strength-based. So that really became the concrete focus in the state of Washington that then allowed us to leverage into around other advocacy and other attempts around funding, and really kind of centered the first step in creating that Washington Family Support Network. Next slide, please. So the launch of the network took a little while. In partnership with the Washington Department of Children, Youth, and Families in 2021, there was a landscape analysis that was commissioned around what were the FRCs in the state of Washington at the time, because all the FRCs were pretty much working independently of each other. So there wasn't a really good understanding of who was out there and who was doing what work around the state. And then Akin, under the name of Children's Home Society of Washington, secured funding from a major funder to have a planning grant to develop the network. We were able to hire a consulting firm called Tamarack Institute out of Canada to work with the network and other key supporters in determining what should the priorities be of the network, what should be the framework of the network, and how do we bring these pieces together. And officially, the network launched in the summer of 2023. So we've been rapidly seeing growth and success with the network that Nathan is also going to get into later in this presentation. For us, the big wins have been related to funding that previously didn't exist for family resource centers in the state of Washington. We've been very successful, shockingly so in some ways, in getting funding for family resource centers. In the last 3 years, it's totaled over $8 million in addition to state general operating dollars. There's also been some additional funding through the Department of Children, Youth, and Families for CBCAP funding that's been focused on FRCs as well. And this is all really contributed to the success of the FRC network. Some of the main things that I often get asked about is, how have you been able to be successful with getting the advocacy piece and the funding for FRCs in the state of Washington, and getting that bipartisan support that is really critical. And it really has come down to how we message the network to both parties. On the Republican side, we've talked about limiting government involvement in the lives of families and that importance of that family to family, community to family support. And on the Democrat side, we've talked about, hey, here's an opportunity to provide more supports to families through FRCs, and how FRCs are helping families navigate services. We have benefited from, and Akin has done this at its own cost, in hiring a skilled lobbyist to help the network on the lobbying and education side. Again, I want to emphasize the great champion Representative Eslick, who's been working with us the past few years on these legislative asks and really has been leading the charge in the state of Washington and bringing her party as well as Dems into the fold. And then the individual FRCs that are throughout the state of Washington have been educating legislators as well as the governor's office, as well as the Department of Children, Youth, and Families about the importance of FRCs and the benefits of FRCs. The unique thing in Washington state that we've also been able to do is really position FRCs outside the scope of child welfare. I know oftentimes family resource centers are talked about in the context of child abuse prevention and neglect, and often are associated strongly with the public child welfare side of the house when you think of government entities. We are unique in Washington state that our Department of Commerce has really taken charge when you think about economic mobility, neighborhood initiatives, community engagement. Those funding streams have actually sat in the Department of Commerce in Washington state. And since FRCs offer a wide variety of opportunities and programming, and also historically have played a role around neighborhood initiatives, community development. The funding that we've been able to offer mostly has been in the Department of Commerce. And we've also had a governor who has led on a 15-year anti-poverty strategic plan that was done in partnership with the Department of Health and Human Services. And there are 15 different areas in that strategic plan that are aligned with what FRCs do. So we've been able to position FRCs outside of what is the traditional scope of FRCs, which is typically child welfare in various states. So that's been an interesting dynamic that we have seen in Washington state. The other thing we've been very successful at is securing private dollar for FRCs as well as the network. In the messaging that we've used, we really connected FRCs to the connection between poverty, neglect, and child welfare, and how FRCs are really addressing root cause issues when it involves families and the connection to all these various aspects. That FRCs reduce barriers and connect families to programs, services, resources, and basic needs, concrete supports. Probably messaging you're all very familiar with, of you that are in the FRC space based on the survey earlier. A lot of you are aware of that connection to that work, and that's something we've emphasized with private funders. We've also positioned FRCs in the network as a part of a larger child welfare systems change effort. And how do we move the systems toward more prevention and reducing child removal, and how FRCs play a key piece of that. The other thing that we love about FRCs is that focus on family and community voice, hiring those with lived experience, and FRCs being family and community driven. Those all seem to be high selling points when we have talked to private funders about investing in the network and FRCs. So I am going to hand it over to Nathan, who's going to dive into what is happening with the network right now.
Thanks, Janica. Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan. I'm the director of the Washington Family Support Network. I've been in that role for about a year and a half now. So I came in right as kind of the network was in the midst of development and was able to be a part of the launch of that network and the growth of that network. So I'll talk a little bit about the growth that we saw and the members that we have and kind of the landscape. I'll dig in a little bit more. Janica's already alluded to kind of the study that we did to determine kind of what is the presence of FRCs in the state of Washington. And I'll talk a bit about kind of what we've structured our network around in terms of support we can provide to FRCs, as well as ways that we can elevate the FRC sector in the state as well. So a big part that Janica's already spoken about was advocacy. We wanted to make sure that we could provide a voice and a presence in the state and private sector for funding for FRCs. We know that FRCs as a model are incredibly flexible and shaped to look like their communities. And so that means they provide different services. They might do different things, which also makes them a little bit notorious in terms of ease of funding. And so we wanted to be able to find avenues for kind of foundational concrete funding for FRCs. And so that was what informed kind of the decisions that we were making as we advocated for state funds, identifying that kind of family navigator position as a key part that should be present in all FRCs that the state could help fund in terms of supporting FRCs, as well as kind of quality improvement measures. And we're hoping to continue to build that. So we've had success in many different avenues in that regard. Janica talked about the governor's budget, the first way we got funds, and then most recently in the general budget and now in the supplemental budget. And so we're gearing up for a big ask here in the next general budget this winter. Part of getting those funds is identifying the need and demonstrating the impact of FRCs across the state of Washington. And so a big part of what we did after doing that study, identifying that there were plenty of FRCs in the state, I think we came up with over 130, was doing outreach, not only to find FRCs and tell them about what we're doing and get them on board and see what kind of support we can provide them and them to us for our advocacy efforts, but also educating communities, educating lawmakers, educating interested parties, other organizations and partners, potential partners about the model and the impact. And so we initially had a group of about maybe 15 organizations helping us develop the network that had been doing FRC work for a long time. And once we launched, outreach had already kind of started, and we had about, I believe, 25 to 30 organizations. And that was not quite a year ago. And now we are beyond 50 independent organizations. And that's just in terms of the FRC members that we have. We also have non-FRC members who are just supportive community partners. But in terms of FRC members, over 50 organizations representing nearly 100 different FRC locations. So those include, Akin has 7 FRCs of our own. The Vancouver Public School District has a large network of FRCs, but many of them are independent nonprofits. Many of them are on this webinar, and so welcome and thank you for showing up. Independent nonprofits serving small communities or niche communities in larger metro areas that really, really represent the folks that they're serving. Once we got the momentum there, and once we had kind of FRCs coming into this network and demonstrating interest and recognizing the value of what we were trying to do, the next step was to look at how can we leverage this, right? How can we take advantage of all this momentum? One, within our advocacy for state funds, but 2, in terms of a long-term demonstration of collective impact on the model, right? So another focus that we have is on data and quality. So that's kind of 2 arms that we're pursuing right now. One is offering the national standards training that the NFSN houses and supports, and we had a few Akin staff able to get trained as trainers, and so now we have training, in-house training that we offer quarterly to network members for free. And then the other project that we've just started is what we're seeing across the country, and the national network is working on doing on a national level as well, but showing that that collective impact through shared data collection. So figuring out what is that data that we can easily collect from FRCs, knowing they all do different things, to kind of package it together and use that as a tool for our advocacy efforts. As we continue to grow, we will see parts of that map of Washington state fill in with FRCs, but we also want to see those kind of areas of the state that are lacking in supports, hopefully identify partners with the amount of people that we have in our network and the connections that we potentially have. The goal, a longer term goal, is to help find partners that can create FRCs in some of those areas so that we can get that that presence really fleshed out across the state of Washington. We're also working this year to refine the membership of the network so that we can kind of target our support towards FRCs, right? There's organizations that have been FRCs for a very long time. There's organizations in our network that aren't yet FRCs, but they really are working to become it because they see the need in their community for that type of an organization. And so we see ourselves as a support for the entire range of that development, similar to the national network Brenda showed before, that kind of emerging, evolving, and I'm not going to remember the third one because I've been in the emerging groups, but the same idea where there is a lifespan of evolution with these organizations, and so having a network that's able to meet those organizations where they're at and provide that support depending on what their needs are is a goal for some of the assistance that we provide. And in doing that, we have been soliciting input from current members to identify, okay, what makes sense for you? Where would you see yourself in these baskets, or what exactly would be particularly beneficial if the network was able to provide it for your organization? We can go to the next slide. And that is all we've got. So I saw some things come up in the chat. I don't know if we'll have many Q&As, but I will pass it back to Brenda, and I appreciate y'all's time and look forward to chatting more about the work we're doing.
Thank you so much, Nathan and Janica and Marlo. So now we move into our Q&A section, just giving you an opportunity to ask the presenters any questions that you might have. Right now, I don't see any currently in the Q&A section, but we'll give it a second. And then if you come up with one as we go through the resources that we have available, we can loop back to this also at the end. But really appreciate the Washington team and Children's Home Society of America providing such a beautiful context and layout for the work that's being done to support families in the country and in Washington, and the innovations that you're doing in that space. So for now, we will move forward as we see no questions in the Q&A section, and just review some of the resources that we have for you. So the very first one is learning more about family resource centers. We have an array of wonderful resources in our FRC resource page listed at the hyperlink that you see below on our website. This includes overviews of what family resource centers are, videos, even live tours that have been recorded of family resource centers to give you a sense of what it's like to step inside of one. Looking at research reports as well as system level funding information that's been made available. Next, we also have these wonderful snapshots that we are in the process of updating for 2023-2024, and they can be found on our website underneath About Us and the Members tab. And our member network snapshots are beautiful 2-page documents that really encapsulate all of the amazing work that the networks are doing at that state level. So if you're really curious to get a glance of what they're doing, their network functions, their highlights, the outcomes, who they serve, how many people they serve, when they started, this is where you can go find it for all of our members across the country, which is 40 states and the District of Columbia. Next is our NFSN Hub. So if you're looking for additional resources, either at the Family Resource Center level or at the network level, we have 2 hubs available for you that compile a variety of templates and documents that can be used, everything from job descriptions for a program director at a Family Resource Center, or at the network level, I'm really looking at creating member benefits, expanding them. What are other members doing across the country? This is your go-to resource. We also have our NFSN Webinar Wednesdays, which is what you're on today. And as you can see from this slide, we have 5 different categories of webinars that we feature, between 2 and 4 a month that we do Webinar Wednesdays, just like today's highlighting Washington Spotlight. This is where you can find upcoming webinars, the recordings of past webinars. It's a treasure trove of resources that we invite you to dive into. We also have, and it was referenced by the team today from Washington, our standard certification training that you too can tap into if your state doesn't offer it already. And our next one is coming up at the end of May on the 23rd and 24th. And this is a 2-day online training that you can find all the information that you need to if you go to nationalfamilysupportnetwork.org and go to the standards tab at the top of the page. Our other core training that we offer currently on digitally, virtually, is our Developing and Sustaining Effective Parent Advisory Committee training. And this next one is happening in June 24th and 25th. And this is a really highly rated virtual training for program staff to maximize the amazing, great potential of parent advisory committees. And it's actually co-trained by both the NFSN staff as well as a national parent leader. Coming up really soon, in just a couple of weeks, is our National Forum. And this is our annual virtual event. And it's an interactive free virtual event designed for stakeholders working at the national, state, and local systems and policy levels. And it provides an annual progress report on the blueprint for the development of strong networks of family resource centers. And it illustrates how participants can support its successful implementation. Last year, we had more than 600 people who registered, and 100% rated it as extremely helpful in informing their work. What's fun about this virtual event is it actually starts with a virtual tour of a family resource center, and then we'll go over the main program and then opportunities to connect with state FRCs across the country. We also have in October our biannual Together for Families conference. And this is done in partnership with the Center for the Study of Social Policy, the two national family support networks, one out of Canada, Families Canada, and one out of Ireland called the Family Resource Center National Forum, where we come together and we have presenters from across the country and across the world, across 3 different tracks, presenting on supports, resources, trainings, and what you need to know to help support families. And in fact, if you have a topic that you'd love to be featured, this is a great opportunity to do so. And there's just, gosh, is today the 2nd or the 1st? 1 day remaining to submit your proposal to present at the Together for Families conference. And it is a virtual conference. And we're looking for 75-minute engaging, interactive skill building and or knowledge sharing sessions related to one of these 3 conference tracks. So innovative family support practices and policies, integrating family voice, partnership, and leadership, and widening access to concrete and community-based supports to narrow the door to the child welfare intervention. So if someone you know, a partner, someone in-house in your organization, this is the last chance to submit a proposal. We'd love to have as many presenters featured as possible. And kicking off this virtual event for the Together for Families conference is our June 4th kickoff event. You'll be able to go to togetherforfamilies.org to sign up for the kickoff event, where we're giving away raffle prizes, complimentary conference registration, and then registration information and details will be announced soon. We also wanted you to know that our upcoming training offerings that our team has been hard working putting together are these 3. So the next one coming out is our Connect with Effect outreach training. And this is a really great training to revamp and think about new strategies that you can do to do outreach to your parents in the communities that you serve. And then we're cooking up 2 new trainings to be launched later this year, a fatherhood engagement training, as well as an FRC 101 training on how to start a family resource center. And this is my contact information if you'd like to reach out to me directly. But before we conclude the webinar, I see we have a question in our Q&A section. So thank you so much for submitting this. So the question is, who are partners you'd like to partner with that you'd either haven't had the chance to work with yet or haven't worked with in a while? So I will invite our presenters to answer that question. So are there partners out there that you'd really like to partner with that either it's been a while or you've never had the chance to partner with them? Who would those be for our presenters today?
Nathan, did you want me to take that one, or did you want to take?
You can start. I've got something I can add, depending if it's not the same.
Well, I think there's an opportunity with family resource centers because they intersect with so many different government agencies and other systems out there in Washington state in particular. So I'm thinking about, we actually, the National Family Support Network recently had a presenter from community action agencies as an example. That is an entity that's very strong in Washington state. And we have some that are part of the FRC network, but haven't really explored what is the potential there of maybe shared opportunities. We continue to explore the potential with like Help Me Grow, which is a very strong force in Washington State in that 0 to 5 space, as an example. And we're consistently trying to find overlap and opportunities with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, but also the Department of Health and Human Services when it comes to obviously like TANF, SNAP, concrete supports, et cetera, as well as schools. So yeah, there are definitely opportunities out there. I think it's prioritizing and figuring out what one do you do first, because it can be a lot, but that's the cool thing about FRCs is they intersect with so many different possibilities. Nathan, what would you like to add?
It's in the same vein, but I'll specifically call out our accountable communities of health, our ACHs across Washington State. This is a little bit of a spoiler of a conversation we'll probably have in one of our monthly meetings. But they in particular are, I don't know how unique they are to Washington State. They're unique to me, and I've lived in a few different states. But they're groups set up to, I think, really be able to target specific community needs with funds that would otherwise have a difficult time getting there through Medicare and Medicaid. And so FRCs, I think, are positioned really, really well to partner with them to target those needs. We do see in Northwest Washington, the ACH there has been working with FRCs for a long time. And so that was kind of a choice that they made in that region. There's other regions where I don't believe there's been much communication about or between FRCs and the ACHs. So that's something I'm really hoping to be able to target this year and see kind of where we're at, take temperature on that, and see what opportunities we have.
Thank you, Janica and Nathan. And Marlo, did you have a response too?
I do. I have a couple of responses from two different hats that I wear. So from my Children's Home Society of America hat, which I'm coming to you today wearing, we are really thinking about how to partner with research institutions to look into community-based prevention. And there's actually a new initiative that I would suggest folks look into. There's the National Research, the 21st Century Research Agenda for Child and Family Wellbeing, and several funders and got together and convened multiple stakeholders of all different representations to develop what is a 300-point research agenda around child and family well-being, but they uplift 23 high priority research gaps. And I think that might be of interest to folks, and I can chat a link in a minute when I'm done talking. But we really think about innovation, and we've done some innovation with the Harvard Center for Developing Child, and actually Ken helped make that connection for the CHSA network. So research institutions. I mentioned that a number of our members do mobility mentoring, which as I shared briefly, is this coaching model to help connect families to create their own pathway toward financial stability. And so in that vein and related to FRCs, thinking about the kind of things that we all do as organizations and entities that are supporting child and family well-being, thinking about that as having a tie to workforce development. And so thinking more about tying to those in our states who are leading workforce development efforts, who receive funding from the Federal Workforce Investment Opportunities Act. So we're thinking about that connection, and then also housing. So folks who work in housing and bridging those partnerships, more making stronger partnerships there. And then if I can put on another hat, so I'm also working with the Potts Family Foundation in Oklahoma, who's working with the state FRC network in Oklahoma. And through that effort, just because we're excited about it, I will share that there are 8 new family resource centers in Oklahoma as of a couple of weeks ago through the work that's going on there. But we're really thinking about how to help rural communities create family resource hubs. So where the whole community, so there's a family resource center, because I understand the model and the value of that. So a place-based, and also thinking about how to partner across communities to make it so that families feel resourced wherever they may go in the community. So libraries, civic clubs, Reach Out and Read, pediatricians. So really thinking expansively about community level partnerships. And also, we are working, this is a national effort so this ties all my hats together, the National Nurture Connection Movement, which is at nurtureconnection.org, which is really advancing a campaign around early relational health. And I think that's another resource, another partnership we're forging, and another resource that may be of interest to folks.
Marlo, thank you so much for sharing that incredible list. I love, on the innovation front, the Frontiers of Innovation and the Harvard Center on the Developing Child has such incredible resources out there for folks investigating this space. And I love all the touch points that the examples gave. And from the National Family Support Network perspective, we're always looking at how can we create national to local level partnerships that both support and help our networks flourish as well as their FRCs. And one area that actually I've been tasked with that wasn't mentioned here that I'll just put a shout out for is really thinking about what are the additional resource hubs that we can of support that we can give to our members from a organizational HR perspective, from a data and evaluation based perspective, from a funding and grant support perspective, from staff development, all of the pieces from mental health and wellness to actualizing quality practice with quality standards. We're sort of thinking about the entire landscape of partnerships that we can create that bring this catalytic frontier to our FRCs and networks across the country. So lots of great brainstorm suggestions there. Appreciate the question that came in. Just want to make sure there's no additional questions. Nope, we do see some links there. Thank you, Marlo, for putting in those website links. And just want to say thank you to our presenters again for sharing the amazing work that's being done across the country and in Washington. We appreciate your time and your advocacy on behalf of families. And in just a second, we're going to switch over to our survey. Please take a moment to give us some feedback. It helps us figure out the direction of our future webinars and if we're hitting the mark the way that we'd like to. So thank you everybody for taking the time out today to join us for today's webinar Wednesday, our spotlight on the Washington Family Support Network. And we'll move to our survey next.